Welcome back to another episode of Motogp Mac, and today we're going to talk about the sprint race that just happened in the Austrian Grand Prix weekend. Now, before we get into it, here is how they finished. Pecco Bagnaia won it from Brad Binder, Jorge Martin, Alex Marquez, Jack Miller, Pol Espargaro, Alex Espargaro, Maverick Vinales, Franco Morbidelli, Marc Marquez, Fabio Di Giannantonio, Joan Mir, Enea Bastianini, Raul Fernandez, Fabio Quartararo, Iker Lecuona, Augusto Fernandez. Johan Zarco retired. Luca Marini was involved in an incident with Jorge Martin. Lorenzo Salvadori was involved in an incident with Fabio Quartararo. Taka Nakagami crashed. Marco Bezzecchi and Miguel Oliveira also were involved in an incident with Fabio Quartararo and Jorge Martin, which I'll talk about a little bit in a while. But let's talk about the race. I think a lot of the race was decided, from my point of view, at turn one. Jorge Martin seemed to steam up the inside, took the handlebar from Quartararo, who knocked into Oliveira and Bezzecchi. Now, Oliveira and Bezzecchi did go down, but Bezzecchi got back up, but came in a couple of laps later. It looked, in my view, I suppose, a little bit of aggressive move by Jorge Martin, who was also involved in an incident going into turn 2A with Luca Marini, although the stewards didn't do anything about that. It kind of was a 50-50, but again, looking at the incident earlier on, it did seem that it was Jorge Martin Bam trying to push his way through to the front. Pecco, for I think about 2 or 3 laps, was under a bit of pressure from Brad Binder, but he was, to be fair, impeccable. Never really running wide, had a nice gap at the end. Binder is the same, very controlled race. Jorge Martin, Bam Martin, was definitely flying up there. Solid race from Alex Marquez. Again, lonely. I think, the sprint race was a bit stretched out with a lot of people being pushed out of the way at the very start. Jack Miller, surprising that he was 11 seconds back in, but again, he's had a tough weekend with the electronics. The rider of the day for me, besides Pecco, was Pol Espargaro, definitely putting manners on his teammate Augusto Fernandez, and also putting manners on his brother. Aleix Espargaro, I did expect a little bit more pace from the Aprilia with him on it this weekend. Vinales, again, he was caught up also. I didn't mention it in the first corner incident with Jorge Martin, so he did do a really good recovery. Definitely he would have been in the mix, in my view, for the win, or to at least put pressure on Pecco, because he did have some very, very good pace. His fastest lap as well, wasn't amazing, but I think he would have been thereabout for the podium anyway, at least. Franco Morbidelli got into the top 9, which is quite strange, but it also gives you a kind of a flavour that a lot of people were out in front of him. Marc Marquez, very quiet and lonely race, didn't really feature much on the cameras, but again, at least he's finishing, getting points. Controlled race, let's just call it. Fabio Di Giannantonio, solid race as well. Good race from Joan Mir, if I'm honest. Again, yes, people were crashing out ahead of him, but he has finished ahead of Enea Bastianini on pace, which is good for him. Raul Fernandez, not much really to say there. He should be far up the grid, in my honest opinion. Fabio Quartararo, again, he was involved in that incident in turn 1. He was involved in a weird incident with Lorenzo Salvadori out in turn 4, where he got a long lap penalty for irresponsible riding. So kind of says his day and sums it up. Iker Lecuona didn't do a bad race, and Augusto Fernandez, I'm actually a little bit surprised. I thought he would go better here. Johan Zarco pulled in towards the end of the race, not 100% sure why. Marini again touched with Jorge Martin, Salvadori with Quartararo. Nakagami, who hasn't crashed much this year, did end up in the gravel. Now, it was interesting to see that Honda's new aero, Marquez says it's giving them it's affecting them a little bit more, and you could kind of see it that the Yamahas were actually catching the Hondas on acceleration. So is it too draggy? I guess we're going to wait and see. But overall, I think, the odd bit of drama here, but at the front, I think it was kind of a pretty calm sprint, except for the first couple of corners. Definitely going to be good tomorrow to see. This one, the teams are under a lot of pressure with the tire temperature and tire pressure sensors because, the track is quite hot, whereas in Silverstone the last time it was not. So the race is going to be really interesting. I do expect Jorge Martin to get some sort of penalty after it, so maybe he may not hold on to that third place, or he might get a stupid fucking long lap penalty in tomorrow's race. But definitely for me, the riders of the day were Pecco Bagnaia, who was absolutely brilliant, and Pol Espargaro, who I have to say, take my hat off to you, sir. What a race. But I would definitely love to know who your riders of the race were. What did you think of the sprint race? Definitely leave your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll be back again tomorrow with another video.